Hello, I'm Jerry Meyer, president of the Resident Association here at Givens Estates. And I'm very pleased to say that we're sharing today through the Givens Connect program a discussion about the Aldersgate affiliation with Givens communities. And it's an example of the citizenship model of collaboration between the residents of Givens communities and the staff. Kevin Schwab, CEO of Givens Communities, is here and has been very open for sharing the details of the affiliation process. And this is a continuation of sharing those details and the situation as it stands today. We're also sharing this conversation with Givens Highland Farms Resident Council President Suzanne Sutherland, who's to my right. Welcome, Suzanne. Kevin, glad to have you for the discussion.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Suzanne, would you
Sure.
ask the first question to Kevin?
sure. And I just would like to mention that this is November of 2025, and we've completed the affiliation with
Mhm.
Aldersgate.
Yes.
So this is a follow-up discussion. Kevin, would you summarize the Aldersgate affiliation with Givens Communities, and maybe address whether there are other life plan communities in North Carolina who have joined together recently? Is this a model?
Yeah. So the affiliation, as you mentioned, became official September 1st of this year. It was a long process, and I can't even remember when it all started, but it started sometime in 2024, right after Aline. I remember it going back to that. So a lot of due diligence, a lot of processing up to that point that led us to the September 1st date. As you recall, there was multiple different communications that happened in between there. In regards to what step we were right. We were originally received the selected as the RFP of choice, right? A request for a proposal of choice. That was the first piece, and then we kind of went from there, and then we worked through the finalization, which took the whole summer, which ended on September 1st. And what affiliation means, just to reiterate, because it's a little weird term in our industry, right? It's really when two nonprofits come together, right? It is similar to a purchase or a merger, but it isn't because there's no owner of any nonprofit, right? The nonprofit is governed by the board of directors. There's not someone that owns the property, and so there can't be an acquisition because the money would have to go to some owner, right? So the term affiliation is used in this place, and yeah, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no,
So
good.
this is different than Gibbons' purchase of Highland Farms several
Correct.
years ago.
Correct. Highland Farms was a purchase. If people that recall when they were at Highland Farms or at Givens Estates during that time, Highland Farms was owned by a for-profit by three
Right.
individuals, and so
Right.
that was a purchase. So that money, I can't even I wasn't here at that time, but that money that we spent at Highland Farms went to those owners, right? In this situation, there was no money going to anyone in particular, right? And an affiliation in this form, sometimes we'll use the term member substitution, and that's the formal arrangement of the affiliation. It's a member substitution where our governance body, our board of directors, substituted their board of directors, and their board of directors on September 1st officially ended, basically was terminated, and our board took its place. And so a lot of the closing documents related to our bylaws that kind of reinstated the formality of that process. And that's really what took place on September 1st, as well as some financial stuff, which we'll go into a different question. The second part of your question is, there other models in the state? Yes, and in the country. Well, so I'll go over some examples in the state, but according to a lot of our experts in our industry, Ziegler, who is a big bond institution in our industry, they report every year the number of affiliations. It is ramping up because being a single site community is very challenging. Our industry is becoming more complex when you consider the cost of goods, right? We went through really not hyperinflation, but extraordinary inflation from COVID up until today, where a lot of single site communities couldn't sustain that very healthily, financially. So that's been increasing year after year, the amount of affiliations or acquisitions. Some places, some nonprofit organizations become purchased by for-profits, right? They leave the nonprofit space in this instance, and so In this place, we were able to have two nonprofits come together, us substituting at Aldersgate. A couple of brief examples, and you probably heard of some of these. One is published on the local PBS station because they have an advertisement. Is Contura. Contura was brought together by two life plan communities or life plan community organizations, Brightspire, previously Presbyterian Homes of North Carolina, and Wellspring came together and they combined into one organization called Contura. And many reasons why they did it. It was different than our purposes with Aldersgate. But then there also was a purchase recently. Every age I think they're out of Newton, North Carolina, purchased Providence Place, which is another nonprofit I think it was a nonprofit entity, but that was an actual acquisition because there was still an owner of a bigger group of theirs because they just sold one community of theirs, and that happened. And I think Providence Place was in Hickory, North Carolina. So that was an actual purchase. Those are the most recent, but there's a lot of activity right now in our space in terms of affiliations, just because it's hard to be single site.
Okay, Kevin.
Yeah.
Thanks for that answer. What are the current and potential benefits of the affiliation for the Givens Estates and Given Highland Farms residents?
Yeah, well, probably the first one and the major one is monetarily, right? If you think of it, we have a larger base, more revenue. We're going from approximately 100 million to 150 million in revenue, and because of that, we're able to spread our fixed costs over a larger spectrum of individuals, right? Especially when you consider it, how we do our management fees are based on revenue, and we're able to shift them over a larger base. More residents paying fixed costs, right? That's not a bad thing. What's taking place just in 2026, which is going to be a little bit differently as we go forward, we're going to be more of a shared services model where Givens Communities has been that way, but we're trying to put more things into that and charge via management fee, such as some of our fixed costs related to financial operations, HR, IT, those things. And in the past, they would be direct expense. We're going to do things a little differently. Same costs, same model, but we're going to be able to spread those costs over the three entities primarily, rather than just two. And if you do any simplistic models, you'll understand if you take $100 and split it over two, that's 50, right? You split it over three, that's $33 a piece. That's where the essential cost savings are coming in. Now, granted, there is some slight increase in fixed cost, but that's still overly, when you spread that all out, it's still a reduction of fixed costs per entity and per resident. A couple of other benefits is just access to talent in a different market. We have access to more board members and other things that are related to that. Shared ideas, shared relationships between communities, right? We all do things differently. Highland Farms is different than Estates, which is different than Aldersgate. Just this collaboration between the two resident councils, right? We're going to have another resident council to share ideas because we're all going to do things a little differently. And I think that sharing of space and sharing of ideas is important. And then just in terms of some of our operating entities, we're able to share knowledge between another community. We'll have larger teams of dining, like larger teams of health services that now we're going to have a team that can bounce ideas off of, best practices off of, or shared ideas. And it will just have bigger buying power. So certain things that we buy in bulk, we'll get cheaper pricing. And that's a direct benefit to residents, particularly food, major supplies that we buy, and stuff like that. And there's just other intrinsic benefits too that come out of it as well that you'll see over time, but it'll be a process.
Thank you, Kevin. You mentioned in that team members, so let's talk about will Givens Estates or Highland Farms team members be working at Aldersgate? And as a follow-up, sort of who is involved exactly, and will leadership attention be pulled away from the existing campuses?
Yeah, so I'll address the first part first, which is direct individuals that work at Estates and Highland Farms. No, they will not be pulled away. We did have some transitions of team, right? But we replaced them. We had Ken Kramer, that was the executive director of Highland Farms. It was an opportunity for him to grow. He took that job. That was not intentional.
So Ken's now the the executive director at Aldersgate.
Correct. Yeah, thanks for filling that in. And then we hired somebody else, Matt Sharp, who's the new ED at Gibbons Highland Farms. Kirsten and Matt are not going to have any, real work responsibilities with Aldersgate at all. They're going to meet and share ideas, like I was just talking. Right, there's those things, but it's not pulling away people. The teams at Estates, the Kirstens, the dining committee, the dining team, the health service team, they're all going to be committed to Gibbons Estates. The team at Highland Farms, Matt, Lino, that team is going to be at Highland Farms. Same thing at Aldersgate. They have their own team specializing in all those same areas. Who's going to be kind of pulled in different directions at periods of time is going to be myself and Al and some of our shared services teams, right? But we're also adding capacity in those areas to be able to do more work in terms of those areas as well. So the teams that are going to be working with Aldersgate, just like we currently work with Estates and Highland Farms, are the VPs of HR, VPs of sales and marketing, VPs of IT. But we also have directors and controllers and other individuals that work directly at the community. So when I'm talking about myself and Scott Farkas, who's our COO, and Alan Squires, our CFO, we oversee individuals that actually do the hands-on work at each community, so that nothing will change.
Yeah. So it sounds like the people that are involved directly in resident services on the campuses will not be shared across the community.
100% correct.
That includes maintenance and grounds and facilities for each campus, etc.
There'll be, like I said, there's been a push that Scott has been pushing towards, which I agree with, is in terms of having a retreat for health services. So the health services team gets together and they share ideas, get to know each other so they can pick up a phone. Same thing with grounds. We will probably have individuals come and take a look at Aldersgate, based on what's going on there, what we can do differently in terms of grounds. We outsource grounds at Aldersgate. Right. So we might want to just have our grounds team just pick their brain a little bit in terms of how would you set up a grounds team at Aldersgate. They wouldn't be moving to Aldersgate, but we use their knowledge, right? That's the beauty of having multi-sites, because now we have knowledge in different spaces.
So I think you on that note, you mentioned shared marketing, for instance, because marketing is a common activity on all campuses.
Correct.
So some people here at Gibbons Estates would say Josue Molina is the marketing director at Gibbons Estates, but he's really the marketing director for Gibbons Communities. Is that correct?
He's the what's his proper title? Gibbons Communities Independent Living Marketing Director, I believe is the official title is. So he oversees all the marketing teams and marketing managers or sales managers at Estates, Highland Farms, and now Aldersgate. And so with that, we have consistent processes, which we benefit greatly with Estates having close to 98% occupancy, same at Highland Farms, and hopefully Aldersgate sees that too soon. So we're going to use best practices. And same thing with health services admissions. Ashley Haney, who's our health services admissions director for Gibbons Communities, she's a little bit more behind the scenes because it's more of the health services side. She also supports all three in terms of that side of the equation.
Well, thanks for those examples and clarification. Yeah. So we have another question here. Are you ready?
Sure.
I'm sorry. I think it's your turn, Suzanne.
Well, actually, this question is about monthly fees. What effect does this affiliation have on the monthly fees for the estates and for Highland Farms now or in future years? Will it increase financial risk for us? How can we be sure that there are guardrails that are protecting us in terms of the commitments you've made to us? And where does the money come from?
Yeah, well, a couple. Let's break that down individually. The first one is the monthly fees. Yeah, absolutely not. Right, the affiliation is independent of the monthly service fees that we charge. Right, we base the monthly service fees based on the costs and expenses at each of the communities that are taking place. And so we look at that, right? The costs that are directly associated with Gibbons Estates residences and Highland Farms, as well, we look at utilities and direct service expenses. And so that's how we budget and we set fees based on that community. Okay, does that make sense a little bit? And so the affiliation costs or anything that's going to be taking place is actually not included in monthly service fees. Actually, it probably what it does do is actually keeps the fees more stabilized with the sharing of costs, right? Because we have certain costs being shared, and so it actually has a benefit. Now we can't always compute that 100% day to day in terms of when we look at the monthly service fees, but when you see the monthly service fees this year, as we just approved the budget for 2026, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised as residents and seeing how that all worked out. So, absolutely not, and I think in future years, what we're going to see is the same thing I just said. It's based on the community level, right? There's a lot of things that happen, right? Inflation and all those things that happen, but I do think we see a more stabilization and more of a flat line in terms of we're able to withstand more financial pressures by being a little bit larger. And so I think residents will have a direct benefit of that. The second part of your question is, could this increase our financial risk for the campuses? No, the answer to that quickly in terms of the affiliation. Aldersgate remains its own corporation, all right? Our corporate structure gets a little complicated, so I'm not going to go through it in detail, but we do have information to share if anyone wants to go into that detail. We do have Givens Estates Inc. And Givens Estate Inc. Consists of obviously Givens Estates, the campus, but also Givens Highland Farms LLC and some other affiliates that fall underneath Givens Estates, such as Givens Home First, Givens Communities, and Givens Choice. Those are all LLCs that fall underneath Givens Estates Inc. Aldersgate is a separate corporation, falls under the umbrella of Givens Communities as a whole because it's governed by the same governing structure, right? The Givens Estates Inc. Board of Directors, which we sometimes will use Givens Communities interchangeably. And so with that, it has its own risks, and every campus goes to Highland Farms, goes to Estates, and goes to Aldersgate, as well as affordable communities, have their own separate budgets. They're expected to meet their own debts and obligations, and pay team members, and like I said, their own budgets. One other thing that is a safeguard in terms of this transaction, at least at this point in time, we have what's termed as an obligated group. It's kind of like a guarantor of our bonds that we have or our debt. Aldersgate Inc., which is Aldersgate United Methodist Retirement Community's official name of that incorporated, they are not in our obligated group. They're their own separate. They're standing kind of on their own for now. Just to kind of keep that separation of risk of the debt being paid by the corporations. And so, but Givens Estates, Highland Farms, and some of the other entities are in the obligated group. I hope that makes sense. It gets a little confusing. And that obligated group only guarantees the debtors, meaning the people that hold their bonds. It has nothing to do with residents or vendors that we pay. It really is only about bondholders, because it's just similar to having a mortgage and a mortgage guarantee. And so I kind of talked about your guardrails, and that's where those guardrails exist, separate entities, separate financial statements, and everything else. And the last part of your question was kind of where did the money come from, right, to support Aldersgate? Well, Givens Estates Inc. has been around for 50 years. And so through that 50 plus years, right, we've had accumulation of some assets, right, in terms of profits from years upon years and investing and so forth. And so Givens Estates Inc. as a whole had, I'm quoting numbers here, but around $150 million of cash and investments, right? So that money is accumulation of many different 50 years of accumulation, right? It's not a 1 year. It's not residents' money today. Right? It's accumulation of 50 years of financial prudence that set Givens Estates in a good position, as well as investment earnings and stuff like that through that cash accumulation. And that's where, and I'll go through that in the next question.
Since you've mentioned the basically money that was used to support the affiliation, many residents have believed that's a loan was to Aldersgate. So they're asking, is it being repaid? Is it forgiven, or is it invested in Aldersgate? So that's sort of the first question. And then secondly, to follow up on that, if it's an investment, what does that mean
Sure.
to us?
Sure.
So
If I forget to answer the follow up,
we'll get
remind
it.
me.
We'll
All
get
right.
it.
So initially, when we were communicating, all right, first I couldn't communicate in details because we signed a non-disclosure, and through legal documents, we just couldn't share that much. Now everything's closed. I can share a little bit more, and that's why we're meeting here today, right? You have to be a little bit more transparent through the process. The initial payment that we made was designed as a loan, and it was, if I remember, it was like $5.5 million loan approximately to Aldersgate, and that was done during a period of time when the affiliation wasn't official. We were going through the process, and it was kind of like, if you want to look at it as earnest money when you buy a house, uh, and it was just really to get them by to start paying their residents entrance fees, right? Because they were kind of delinquent in some entrance fees.
Refunds for residents
Correct,
that had left
correct,
their
correct,
community
exactly.
work being paid.
And some vendors, right? And vendors that weren't getting paid. So that was initially structured as a loan because it wasn't official. And so if we never got through the affiliation, they were going to have to pay us back, either through another affiliation that they would go with another organization or what have you. So initially it was structured as a loan. The agreement was, at the time of close, it was going to be structured, it was going to be forgiven and then structured as an investment in Aldersgate Corporation. Excuse me. On top of that 5.5 million in total, it's going to be a total investment in Aldersgate of 20.5 million. Okay, that's going to be the total investment in Aldersgate from Givens Estates Inc. Not Givens Estates, but the Givens Estates Inc. It's going to be made, and we made a payment, like I said, of the 5.5 sometime in early summer. I can't remember the time frame. Another portion was paid off, and when it was closed on September 1st, the remainder will be paid after our audited period of 2025, which will be in approximately April, May of 26. And then that'll be a full $20.5 million investment. Now, to put that in perspective, two things. One, the 20.5, unlike Highland Farms, we actually gave the Highland Farms owners, let's say it was 20.5, I don't know what that dollar amount was, that went out the door, right? That went with the owners. This 20.5 goes to Aldersgate, stays on our balance sheet, and when we consolidate, it's still our own cash, right? Does that make, we're taking one from one pocket, put it into the next pocket, and that's kind of what's happening here. To put it also in perspective, the 20.5 million, which sounds like a lot of money, when we built Friendship Park at Estates in 2021, 2022, that building was 36 million, and it was for what, 60 units.
Talking about both of those buildings.
Both of those
in
buildings.
That whole development
Was
60 million.
Yes, was 36 million.
Oh, 36
When
million.
was that?
That was 2021. So probably in today's
So-
dollar amount is 45 million, probably.
Yeah.
But and for Highland Farms, the Vista Ridge South building that just finished, that was 25 million for 36 units. And so 20.5 million for a campus in Charlotte of 500 plus residents, it's plus 214 acres. It's really not a bad investment for Givens that we're very excited for. It's a lot of money for Aldersgate to help them get on good footing because they needed it at that time. They expect to stand on their own from this point. It was really to catch them up on some past payments, but not as a carry forward. And it was just, like I said, it's taken from one pocket and put it in the next. And we, just to put it also in another perspective, we invest in the stock market every day, right? Of the 150 million, just like residents and me, right, with our retirement, we invest in the stock market every day. So we're taking our own money for Givens Estates, instead of putting in a mutual fund for 20 million, we're putting into something that we have control over, right? And we expect that, we will have a return. We know we'll have a return. It's already is having a return on the dollar. And the benefits to the residents, as we talked about before, is just reduce costs as we go forward. And I don't want to, discredit the acreage at Aldersgate of 214 acres. I think I looked at an average price of an acre in Charlotte is about 100 to 200,000 per acre. Just the acreage cost is $21 million, up to $40 million of just the land value.
So that's the value of the land that Aldersgate sits on without considering its buildings value.
Correct.
And it has substantial buildings also on that campus.
Correct. Correct.
do
It
for
does have
campus.
debt. That's the flip side, but
Yeah.
it is and will continue to be a solid investment for Givens going forward. And it's meaningful to give it to Aldersgate residents and Aldersgate as a community as well.
So Kevin, just to capsulate that issue, it really is an investment in Aldersgate
Correct.
for Givens communities
Correct.
as a group, and you expect a return by it operating well.
Correct.
I mean, that's how we ought to be positioning it now.
Yes.
It is no longer a loan,
It's no longer a loan.
and it wasn't forgiven.
Correct. It just converted
It was converted,
Yeah.
and Givens Communities as an entity still has control over that money and that property now.
Correct. The board of
For that.
directors has the control over that entity, just like it does the states and Island Farms. Great summation of that.
Okay, well, thank you.
And yes, and more specifically, that money did not come from Givens Estates or Givens Highland Farms. It came from Givens Communities for the investment.
It did. Yeah. We have some restrictions of how money can be moved outside that
Right.
obligated group,
Right.
and it comes from Givens Communities. Yes.
The communities
Correct.
as a whole. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, just to follow up on this growing empire that we're creating here. You've said quite a bit about the advantages of the affiliation.
Yeah.
Can you say a little bit more about moving forward? Are we going to be creating a larger group of Givens communities? Is that the plan? Is it important to do that? What are we thinking of?
Yeah, I mean, growth is always important, I think, to consider if there's the right opportunity. We're not looking for growth just for growth's sake. It needs to be strategic and mission oriented. And this fit our mission well in terms of growth. It was an opportunity for Givens, a once in a lifetime opportunity, especially with the size of Aldersgate and their long history and where they're located in a new geographic region. There's all those benefits to it. So from a standpoint of growth, it made 100% sense. We're not just growing for growing's sake. We're going to be very prudent and take things intentionally as things come up. I think, Givens Estates Inc., Givens Communities as a whole, and now including Aldersgate, we're a successful organization, and so opportunities will come to our attention more. It just happens that way, and so we're going to take our time, and we want to make sure what we do is going to be prudent, that we can sustain it, and make sure that's a benefit for residents of everyone. Right? Our mission is to serve older adults in North Carolina, and that's if something comes up, we're going to take a look at it, because as long as it's a benefit as we see it, right? And that's going to be dictated by our board and stuff like that. We are growing on affordable communities. That's a separate piece of our business. We do talk about Marion, the Clinchville Mill, and Marion just got funded. I remember sending out something a couple weeks ago. And then Webster Village earlier this year got funded through HUD. Two very successful projects and much needed in Western North Carolina. We're going to continue to look at advancements there just because it's needed. It's part of our mission. It's part of our DNA of how we were founded. Once again, that's also going to be prudent. We expect affordable communities to stand on their own. We get the benefit of having the community benefit as our obligation of a tax, as a tax-free entity. So there's some mutual benefits on that side of the equation. But we're going to continue to look at things of how we can make the best source of our uses of our cash and other things, but aren't hurting the culture and what we're doing at our campuses. Right? We don't want to detract from anything. We just want to add to. And so if it's a value add for the organization, we'll pursue it. If it's not, we won't. So I think I answered that question.
Yeah. I was going to pick up on the latter part of what we have, and that is, will the affiliation affect any of the master planning for future development on Givens Estates or Givens Highland Farms campuses?
Yeah.
And how might it affect our culture at all, or what do we see that as leadership? Those are sort of the final questions.
I'll answer the master plans first. Absolutely not. This is no impact on our master plans at all. I know where we switched architects recently, right? We communicated at both campuses via campus gatherings and community meetings. We're still going through that process. We're getting very, very close. State's a little closer just because it's a little bit more defined than Highland Farm, but we'll have stuff to be able to present hopefully by the end of this year, early next year, to kind of talk through those things. We want to be prepared to go through a big financing in 2026 to pay for that. Take advantage of interest rates. It looks like it's going to be a good environment to go get debt for those uses. So that's our goal. Our goal is to go to financing in middle of 2026. So we're working backwards. So we want to get something solid, share with residents soon, get board approval just for at least the first phase. When we look at our whole master plan, we're going to look at the whole, just because we don't want to put something in a place that could have a potential benefit somewhere else. But right now we're looking at what does that phase one look like in terms of both for estates and Highland Farms, with a big emphasis of focus on health services. Nothing has changed for both campuses there, except costs to do those.
Since you mentioned financing and master plan, the fact that we transferred $20.5 million to Aldersgate Inc. isn't affecting our credit rating or our ability to get debt or our ability to use current capital for expansion if we need it, or for new buildings, let's say.
Very good question. It right now it hasn't. First of all, it's not in our obligated group. It had nothing to do with our rating.
Right.
And we got re-rated sometime in summer of 25, and we stayed A minus by Fitch with a positive outlook, or I think it was neutral outlook, it stayed the same. So no effect. It's not affecting our liquidity in terms of going to financing. We weren't going to use the cash to do that anyways. Maybe pay off some of with some equity into new construction, but we weren't going to pay off all of it anyways. We're going to have to go get debt. That's at a relatively cheap rate still, or will be. What we're seeing in 2026 will be advantageous to get interest, bonds, and have our investments earn more money, which is called arbitrage. So that's going to be our path forward. So,
just to follow up on the master plan, just for the Gibbons Highland Farms residents, to clarify, I believe that the new Meadowmont development is not part of this master plan. That will actually be initiated very soon in terms of the building there. And
correct. Meadowmont is really not included in this phase one. What we're talking about, that's a continuation of some of our buildings that we've been working towards at Highland Farms, such as Vista Ridge South, and then Brookside South will be part of the master plan, just because we still have people living in that building. But Meadowmont, which is on free and clear land, we're able to self-finance for that at Highland Farms. That'll be a continuation, and that'll probably start. We don't have a particular date yet, but sometime 2026 we'll call it. Yeah, and we'll communicate more at our meetings about that. Jerry, I forgot to answer your one question about culture.
Yeah, culture is sort of the wrap up. We now have 3 campuses with very different histories. So how do you see the culture developing, or staying different, or being affected by the?
Yeah, we'll have a couple of pieces that are going to be non-negotiables, I'll say, about the culture, and that's just how we operate. We're going to continue to be transparent and communicate and collaborate like we are here today, and share best practices between the communities and make sure that we're healthy as an organization. That won't change, but the culture at Estates, which is different today than Gibbons Highland Farms, which is different today at Gibbons Aldersgate, will remain different. We're not going to force. I mean, that's the living and breathing of the team members and the residents that work there and live there, and that won't change, right? But like I said, we have a couple non-negotiables, and I think we can all stand by those, right? Our mission, vision, and our core values will remain the same and intact. But how it operates will be a little bit different.
One last thing that occurred to me as we were talking, you were talking about the shared services across campuses. Where does philanthropy fit in terms of sharing?
Yeah, philanthropy is also a shared service, right? So Brian and his team currently is a shared service in Gibbons Communities. Brian Gingrich, he's the VP of philanthropy. So he and his team raise money for all the campuses equally, in part of those shared services. We are looking at setting that into a different corporation eventually, as more, for lack of a better word, not as a community foundation, but more as a Gibbons foundation per se. just because that might be more prudent going forward. So that's something that we're looking into. And we have some tools and resources to do that, but it'll still be a shared service through that because it'll be supporting all our organizations. That makes sense a little bit.
Yes.
So it's no different than financial operations or IT. It's just philanthropy brings in money.
Well, hopefully supports the mission of Givens Communities
Yes.
as it develops.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
And it helps out some of its residents too.
It does.
It's
They,
a shared service.
resident assistance ministry is a big push for. It continues to be a big push for Givens Communities. It's a much needed resource to protect residents. You know that for no fault of their own outlive their resources. So that's going to be a continuous push, and it's very important that we have that. And so, as well as team member assistance and other things that fundraising for certain capital expenses that are resident need that we can't fund through our capital budgets, right? Because it might not fall into the budget year, so we can do things faster with philanthropy, as we are at Highland Farms and we did at Estates. So,
yeah. So I don't think I have any further questions.
I think we're going to wrap this up now.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Suzanne. To the residents, this has been another example of the collaborative nature of discussions on Givens Communities campuses that we're going to work together with residents and staff for the betterment of everyone.
Yeah. If you have any questions, I'm always my door's always open. My email's always available. Like I sent out, I will meet with residents at their questions. So if you do have anything, just send me an email, and I'll get back in touch with you. Thank you.
Thanks.